My name is Clara Ainsworth, and for the first 17 years of my life, I believed my home was a masterpiece of design. My father, Richard Ainsworth, was a partner at Ainsworth and Hayes, one of the most respected architectural firms in Port Blossom, Washington. Our house, a stately colonial on Hemlock Drive, was his proudest creation. It was a place of clean lines, intentional spaces, and a quiet, imposing order. From the outside, bathed in the soft grey light of the Pacific Northwest, it was perfect. A testament to success, to a family built on a solid foundation. But foundations can be deceptive. Some are built not on love, but on control, and the most beautiful facades can hide the deepest cracks. That evening, the scent of rosemary and roast beef, rich and savory, seeped through the fine gap beneath the pantry door. The lock, a heavy brass deadbolt my father had installed himself, was a cold, final punctuation to my latest failure. My stomach a hollow, aching cavern, clenched with a familiar mix of hunger and shame. Through the frosted glass of the kitchen doors, I could see the blurred, moving shapes of my family, my father, my mother, Helen, and my younger sister Sophie, their silhouettes dancing in the warm golden light. They were a family having dinner. I was an exile in my own home. A period of reflection is necessary for Clara. My mother's voice, always calm and measured, carried clearly into the hallway. She needs to understand the line between ambition and ingratitude. My crime this time had been a request. I had asked if I could use some of the money saved for my college fund to attend a summer photography intensive at the Port Blossom Arts College. It spent weeks preparing a proposal, complete with a budget and a portfolio of my best shots. I dreamed of capturing the way the mist softened the edges of the evergreen forests, the stoic beauty of the freighters in the bay, the hidden textures of the city I loved. It was the first thing I had ever truly wanted for myself, a path that deviated from the neat blueprint they had laid out for me. My father had reviewed my proposal with the same critical eye he used for architectural drafts. An indulgence, he'd declared, sliding the papers back across the polished mahogany of his desk. Your focus should be on practical, respectable pursuits. Law, medicine, not chasing shadows with the camera. It's not just a hobby. Dad had argued, my voice smaller than it intended. I think I could be good at it. Being good at it is irrelevant, my mother had interjected, smoothly placing a hand on my father's shoulder. What is relevant is your gratitude for the life we've provided, a life that allows you to even consider such frivolities. This desire of yours feels selfish, Clara. It suggests you don't appreciate the foundation we've built for your future. And so the lesson began. The pantry which housed the bread, the cereals, the snacks, the casual life-sustaining foods of a normal household was locked. When you can demonstrate a sincere appreciation for your existing opportunities, my father had explained, his voice, devoid of anger, full of a chillingly rational disappointment, we will reconsider your access to household resources. This discipline, as they called it, had been a part of my life for years, an insidious creep of control that had started so subtly I hadn't recognized it for what it was. It began with desserts withheld for a B+ on a report card, a grade that fell short of the Ainsworth standard of excellence. Then it was smaller portions for expressing a political opinion that differed from my father's. It escalated to entire meals being denied when I questioned why Sophie at 14 was being flown to Paris for her spring break French class trip, while I was told my request for a simple photography course was an indulgence. Sophie has earned her rewards through a consistently positive and respectful attitude, my mother would explain. Privileges are tied to behavior, Clara. That is how the world works. Now, standing in the dim hallway, I was on day 3. I'd had nothing but water from the bathroom tap. The hunger was a physical presence, a dull, grinding ache that blurred my thoughts and made the world feel distant and unreal. Through the door, I heard Sophie's bright young voice. Can't, Clara. Just have a little bit, there's so much. My father's tone was firm, the voice of a man laying down an unchangeable law. Your sister is learning a valuable lesson about consequences, Sophie. We are building her character. A little hunger can forge a strong will. I retreated to my room, the words echoing in my ears. Building character. It was one of his favorite phrases. He spoke of raising children as if he were constructing a building, each punishment a load-bearing wall, each restriction a necessary brace, to ensure the final structure was strong and perfectly aligned with his design. I was not a person to him. I was a project. And I was failing inspection. My room was my sanctuary, but even it felt like a cage. The window looked out onto a curtain of fine, persistent rain, the sky a uniform shade of pewter. The world outside seemed lush and alive, while inside I was withering. My physics homework lay open on my desk, a page of incomprehensible equations about entropy and the inevitable decay of systems. How could I possibly focus on the laws of the universe when my own small universe was collapsing? My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from my best friend Maya. "You looked like a ghost today." "Everything okay, Maya?" With her fiery spirit and fiercely loyal heart, was the one person who saw the cracks in my family's perfect facade. She had known me since kindergarten, and she knew the difference between the composed, quiet Clara I presented to the world and the girl who wanted to laugh too loud and run barefoot in the grass. I typed and deleted a dozen responses. "My parents are starving me because I want to be a photographer." It sounded like something from a Gothic novel, too dramatic to be real. Even to me, living it the truth felt unbelievable. "Just tired?" I finally texted back. "Big physics test? Get some sleep. See you tomorrow." Tomorrow. I had to hold on until tomorrow. That night was a long, slow torment. My stomach growled and twisted a desperate living thing inside me. I could hear the low murmur of the television downstairs, the occasional burst of laughter from a sitcom. The sounds of a normal family, a happy family. The dissonance was a special kind of cruelty. It made me question my own reality. Was I the one who was wrong? Was I truly so ungrateful, so difficult that I deserved this? They had told me so for so long that their voices had become a part of my own inner monologue. I had tried in the past to hide food, a box of crackers, an apple smuggled from the school cafeteria. But my mother conducted regular, smiling inspections of my room to help me stay organized. She always found my stash. "Hoarding food is a sign of a disordered mind, Clara," Chet said once, her voice laced with manufactured concern, as she confiscated a bag of pretzels. "We are trying to help you build healthy habits, not enable destructive ones." The irony was so profound, it was almost elegant. They were instilling in me a desperate, obsessive relationship with food while accusing me of having one, around 2 a.m., driven by a gnawing emptiness that felt like it was consuming me. From the inside out, I crept downstairs. The house was silent except for the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the foyer, each tick a second of my life wasting away. The pantry door was of course locked. But this time, a new horror awaited me. The refrigerator had a padlock on it now, a sleek silver device that gleamed in the faint moonlight filtering through the windows. They had escalated again. Defeated, I went into the small downstairs bathroom and drank water from the tap cup after cup until my stomach was bloated and sloshing. It was a hollow, painful fullness that did nothing to quell the deep cellular cry for sustenance. I was a ghost in my own home, haunting the spaces where life was supposed to happen. The next morning, the simple act of getting dressed was an ordeal. My favorite jeans, once perfectly snug, hung loosely on my hips. I had to cinch my belt to the last notch to keep them up. I could feel the sharp protrusion of my hip bones, my collarbones a delicate ledge beneath my skin. As I walked past the kitchen, my mother was standing at the counter, arranging a bouquet of white tulips in a crystal vase. She didn't look at me, but she spoke into the quiet air. "Breakfast is a privilege for contributing members of the family." Through the doorway, I could see Sophie at the table, eating a bowl of yogurt with granola and fresh raspberries. The sight of the vibrant red berries made my stomach cramp with such violence that I had to brace myself against the wall. School was a blur. I moved through the hallways as if underwater, conserving every ounce of energy. In my AP English class, we were discussing King Lear, and my teacher, Miss Albright, spoke of Lear's daughters and their false protestations of love. "How do we distinguish true devotion from empty words?" she asked the class. I thought of my own parents, of their pronouncements of love and care, words that were as empty as my stomach. During lunch, I sat with Maya in the bustling cafeteria. The air was thick with the smell of pizza and tater tots. I tried to focus on her story about a disagreement with her brother, but my eyes kept straying to her sandwich-thick slices of turkey and provolone on whole wheat bread. "Clara, you have to eat something." Maya said, her voice low and urgent. She broke off half her sandwich and pushed it across the table. Here, just eat it. The gesture was so kind, it brought tears to my eyes. But I couldn't. I'm not hungry. I lied the words, tasting like ash. I had a big breakfast. My parents' voices echoed in my head. Don't air our family business. We are a private family. To accept the sandwich would be to admit something was wrong, and the consequences of that admission felt more terrifying than the hunger itself. Maya stared at me, her brown eyes filled with a mixture of frustration and fear. This isn't you, Clara. You're fading. Whatever is going on, you can tell me. I just shook my head, unable to speak. The breaking point came in 6th period physics. We were giving presentations on our chosen topics. Mine was on the nature of light, the duality of waves and particles. I stood at the front of the room, my note cards trembling in my hand. The faces of my classmates blurred. Mr. Davison's voice seemed to come from a great distance. I started to speak, but the words wouldn't come. A strange, shimmering darkness began to creep in at the edges of my vision. I felt a buzzing in my ears, like a swarm of invisible bees. I gripped the edge of the lectern, my knuckles white. The world was tilting, the floor rushing up to meet me. In falling was my last coherent thought. Then only blackness. I came to in the quiet, sterile-smelling nurse's office. The school nurse, a kind, bustling woman named Mrs. Gable, was taking my blood pressure. Her brow was furrowed with a deep professional concern. "Clara, honey," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Welcome back. Can you tell me when you last ate a full meal?" I tried to think. The days had become a single long stretch of emptiness. The raspberry I'd seen this morning, the sandwich I hadn't eaten, a meal, a proper meal. I don't remember, I whispered. My throat was raw. She helped me sit up, holding a cup of water with a straw to my lips. The cool liquid was a balm. Then she gestured to the scale in the corner. "I need to get your weight, sweetheart. Just a routine check." I stood on the cold metal plate, swaying slightly. Mrs. Gable stood close, ready to catch me. The digital numbers flickered and then settled. 92 pounds. I was 5'7". Mrs. Gable's breath hitched. She quickly wrote the number down on her clipboard, her expression shifting from concern to alarm. "Clara," she said, her voice losing its gentle edge and taking on a new urgency. "I'm legally and morally obligated to call for an ambulance. Your vitals are dangerously low. You are severely malnourished." "No." The word burst out of me, a raw plea. "Please, don't. My parents, they'll be so furious. I just fainted, that's all." "I'm fine." "Honey, you're not fine," she said, her eyes meeting mine with an unshakable resolve. "This is a medical emergency." She was already reaching for the phone. The wail of the siren felt like a public announcement of my failure. As the paramedics wheeled me out on a stretcher, I saw faces pressed against the school windows. Maya, my classmates, even Mr. Davison. Their expressions were a mixture of shocked pity and morbid curiosity. My family's most sacred rule, privacy at all costs, had just been shattered for the whole world to see. The hospital was a whirlwind of controlled chaos. IV lines were expertly slipped into my veins, cool liquid infusing my dehydrated body. Blood was drawn, monitors were attached, their steady beeping a counterpoint to my own frantic heartbeat. A doctor with tired, compassionate eyes and gentle hands examined me. Her name tag read, "Dr. Evans." "Clara," she said, her voice calm and steady. "We're seeing signs of severe nutritional deficiency. Can you tell me about your eating habits? Is this something you're doing to yourself?" The question was a lifeline. She wasn't accusing me. She was asking. Still, the years of conditioning were a powerful reflex. I don't have an eating disorder." I said the pre-rehearsed line my mother had coached me on years ago, just in case a teacher ever asked questions. "Okay," Dr. Evans said, not pushing. "So you're not choosing to restrict your food. Is someone else restricting it for you?" The directness of the question, the simple logical alternative she presented, broke through the fortress of shame and confusion it'd been trapped in for so long. It was the key turning the lock. Tears I hadn't even known were there began to stream down my face, hot and silent. "My parents," I whispered the words, feeling foreign and treacherous on my tongue. "They locked the pantry and the fridge. It's discipline. For when I'm ungrateful." I finally looked at her, expecting to see disbelief, but her eyes held only a grave, focused attention. "They say it builds character." Dr. Evans exchanged a long, silent look with the nurse beside her. She placed a warm hand on my arm. Clara, what your parents are doing is not building character. It's not discipline. It's a form of abuse called medical neglect. And it's very, very dangerous. I need to make some phone calls. The next few hours were a blur of specialists, a social worker named Miss Garcia with a kind, steady presence, and 2 uniformed police officers who spoke in low, serious tones. My parents were called. I heard their arrival before I saw them. My father's booming, authoritative voice demanding to see his daughter, my mother's sharp, indignant tone insisting this was all a misunderstanding, a gross overreaction by the school. When they were finally allowed into my room, they came flanked by a sharp-suited man who introduced himself as their lawyer. My father's face was a mask of controlled fury. My mother rushed to my bedside, her face a perfect portrait of maternal concern, but her eyes were cold as ice. "Oh, my poor girl," she said loud enough for the doctor and social worker to hear. "Clara has always been so dramatic. She has a history of lying for attention. We've been trying to get her help for her disordered eating, but she's very resistant. Disordered eating doesn't typically present this way, Mrs. Ainsworth, doctor." Evans said, her voice quiet but unyielding. She held up a chart. "The blood work shows a pattern of severe prolonged caloric deprivation. Her electrolyte levels are critical. Her heart is showing signs of arrhythmia due to potassium deficiency. Her body is consuming its own muscle tissue to survive. This isn't a psychological disorder. This is starvation. This is absurd," my father boomed, stepping forward. "We are respected members of this community. Our daughter is a manipulator. She has done this to herself to embarrass us." It was then that a small voice cut through the tension. "That's not true?" We all turned. Sophie was standing in the doorway, her face pale and tear-streaked. Miss Garcia had brought her. She was clutching a worn teddy bear looking impossibly small and fragile. "Sophie, go wait in the hall," my father commanded. But she stood her ground, her gaze fixed on the floor. "They do lock the pantry," she said, her voice barely a whisper, but it filled the silent room. "And the fridge. I hear Clara crying in her room at night because she's so hungry. Mom makes me eat my dessert in the living room sometimes, so Clara has to watch. She says it's to teach her a lesson." The air in the room went still and heavy. My mother's face, for the first time in my life, lost its perfect composure. It crumpled into a mask of pure venomous rage, directed not at me, but at her other daughter, the betrayer. "How could you?" she hissed. Sophie looked up, tears rolling down her cheeks, and her eyes met mine. "I was scared," she whispered to me. "I didn't want you to die." The lawyer began speaking urgently to my parents in a low tone. One of the police officers stepped forward, his hand resting on his belt. "Mr. and Mrs. Ainsworth," the officer said, his voice formal and final. "We need you to come with us. You are being placed under arrest for suspicion of felony child abuse and endangerment." My mother's facade didn't just crack, it shattered into a million pieces. "Her!" she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me as they cuffed her hands behind her back. "She deserved it, the ungrateful, selfish little. We gave her a beautiful home," my father said, his voice shaking with disbelief, as if he couldn't comprehend how his perfect design had led to this. "We gave her everything. Except food," I whispered to the beeping monitor beside me. "You didn't give me food." The weeks that followed were a slow, painful climb back to life. Detectives found the locks, the pristine, well-stocked kitchen that I was barred from. They found my father's meticulously kept journal, where he had documented my transgressions, and the corrective actions taken. It was the blueprint of his abuse laid out in his own neat architectural handwriting. Sophie and I were placed in the temporary custody of our maternal Aunt Carol, my mother's younger sister. Carol was the opposite of my mother in every way. Warm, a little chaotic, with a laugh that filled her entire small, cozy house. Her pantry door was never closed. There was always a bowl of fruit on the counter and the smell of fresh baked bread in the air. My physical recovery was a delicate process. Refeeding syndrome was a serious risk. My starved body could go into shock if given too much too soon. A nutritionist designed a careful plan, slowly reintroducing calories, rebuilding what my parents had systematically tried to dismantle. "Your body is a miracle of resilience, Clara," she told me. "But we'll have to watch for long-term effects. Bone density, cardiac health. This was a significant trauma. The psychological recovery was harder. A therapist, Dr. Lee, helped me untangle the years of emotional manipulation. They taught you that your basic needs were privileges to be earned, she explained. Your sense of self-worth became tied to their approval, and their approval was conditional on your obedience. We have to teach your mind, not just your body, that you have an unconditional right to be nourished. 3 months later, my parents went to trial. The evidence was damning. The medical reports, the police photos, my father's own journal, and Sophie's quiet, unwavering testimony. Their lawyer argued it was a case of misguided discipline, of loving parents who had gone too far. But the prosecutor painted a different picture, one of calculated, systematic cruelty. This was not discipline, she said in her closing argument. This was a siege. They laid siege to their own daughter's body, using hunger as their weapon, all to break her spirit. They were found guilty. My father was sentenced to 10 years, my mother to 15. Her sentence was longer because of her more active role in enforcing the punishments, the particular cruelty Sophie had described. At their sentencing, they were allowed to speak. My father spoke of his disappointment in me. My mother cried not for what she had done, but for how her life had been ruined by a difficult, manipulative child. Neither of them ever said they were sorry. I'm 19 now. Sophie and I live with Aunt Carol permanently. I'm at a healthy weight and the arrhythmia in my heart has resolved, though I still have regular checkups. I'm a freshman at the University of Washington, and though I'm majoring in English, my camera is always with me. I'm still chasing shadows, but now I'm chasing them for myself. Some days are still hard. Sometimes when I sit down to a full plate of food, a flicker of the old guilt returns, my mother's voice a faint echo in my head. Do you deserve that? But now another voice rises to meet it. My own. Yes, it says, I do. Sophie and I cook together often in Aunt Carol's bright sunny kitchen. There are no locks on any of the doors. We make pasta, piling our bowls high, adding extra parmesan just because we can. One evening, as we sat at the small wooden table, the windows open to the cool pine-scented air, Sophie looked at me. Remember when Dad used to say that hunger builds character? I nodded, swirling the spaghetti on my fork. He was wrong, she said quietly. The hunger didn't build character. It just built trauma. She took a deep breath. Surviving them. That's what built character. And I know she's right. I survived a home that was designed to be perfect, and a family that was engineered to break me. They tried to starve me into submission, to shrink me, until I disappeared. But they failed. Every meal I eat, every photograph I take, every opinion I voice is an act of defiance. It is the quiet, steady, and revolutionary act of claiming my own life. They built a foundation of control, but on its ruins, I'm learning to build my own based on self-respect, forgiveness for the child I was, and the simple, profound truth that I'm worthy of taking up space in the world. I'm worthy of being fed,